enter your attendee ID number. Your line has been muted. Press *6 to unmute your own line.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning. Okay, before we jump into what continues to be a very busy news cycle, I have a couple of things that I would like to run. A couple of things I want to run through that are quite important. First, I want to start with a congratulations to the entire CNN organization. Over the past week, CNN has won a total of 10 Emmy Awards, and we're not quite finished yet either. Last night, CNN collected 7 Emmys during the first night of the News and Documentary Emmy Awards. No other network or organization received as many, and last night's haul was a record number of Emmys won by CNN. And as I said, we still have one more night to go tonight. And I truly am truly thrilled because last night's award highlighted the incredible strength of our news gathering operation, both domestic and international, and our truly dogged reporting. And it really, in my mind, defines what CNN is all about. And that's what makes me so proud. For those who are not aware, I'm going to run through the 7 awards that we won last night, including for Outstanding News Analysis, Editorial, and Opinion. And that went to Victor Blackwell for his commentary called Infested about Baltimore. Outstanding Business, Consumer, and Economic Reporting. That Emmy went to Isa Suarez and her team that chronicled Maduro's blood gold in Venezuela. Outstanding coverage of a breaking news story in a newscast went to the team that covered the Roger Stone raid live on New Day, which was one of the truly remarkable moments of last year, and the result of truly intrepid gumshoe reporting by that entire team. For outstanding investigative reporting in a newscast, the Emmy went to Putin's Private Army, reported by Clarissa Ward. Just terrific reporting once again. For outstanding direction in news, Brett Kelly for directing CNN Heroes. The Emmy for outstanding live interview went to Christiane Amanpour for her interview of U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. And the Emmy for outstanding breaking news coverage went to the team that covered Turkey's incursion into Syria, led by Nick Payton-Walsh and Clarissa Ward and their entire team. And what I think was most noteworthy about the breaking news coverage category is that all 5 nominees were for CNN. Again, a tribute and a credit to the incredible global news gathering organization. In addition, obviously, as I noted last week, we won 2 Primetime Emmys for CNN Films' Apollo 11. And so that brings the current total of Emmys to 10, with another night. Tonight's ceremony concludes with documentary and additional craft categories, and all the Spanish language nominees across Dayside and News are going to be presented at a later date. So we still have quite a bit to go, and it has been a remarkable recognition for CNN. Congratulations to everybody involved. I could not be prouder. In addition, I am really pleased to announce this morning a very significant new member of the CNN executive team. And I take really great pride in this announcement. As you know, about 10 days ago, Rick Davis let us know publicly that he will be retiring in January after more than 40 years here. And I said at the time that Rick was irreplaceable, but nonetheless, we would let you know who would succeed Rick, and so we have now made an important decision about the future of the Standards and Practices Group. And with that, today I am thrilled to announce that Calvin Sims will succeed Rick as the Executive Vice President of Standards and Practices for CNN Worldwide. I was introduced to Calvin almost a year ago, and in that time have come to really know and respect Calvin, and I know that he will be a terrific successor to Rick. I believe that Calvin is incredibly well-suited for this role. Most recently, Calvin has served as the president and CEO of International House, which is a nonprofit program founded almost 100 years ago with a mission to promote cross-cultural understanding and peace and prepare world leaders. And prior to that, Calvin he served as program officer for the Ford Foundation, managing a portfolio of news, media, and journalism grants, focusing on the development of a free and responsible press worldwide. Prior to both International House and the Ford Foundation, Calvin spent 20 years at the New York Times, where he was a director, a producer, and a domestic and foreign correspondent, and he played a central role there in the New York Times expansion into television, documentaries, and the web. He joined the Times right out of college, eventually became part of the newspaper's business, metro, and Washington desk, and then he became a foreign correspondent based in Buenos Aires, Tokyo, Seoul, and Jakarta. Calvin is incredibly accomplished and brings more than 30 years of experience in news, foreign affairs, and philanthropy to CNN. He will join us next week and will work side by side with Rick over the next 4 months as he learns CNN. And so I'm grateful for Rick for that as well. In addition, because I said that Rick's more than 40 years at CNN led his responsibilities to include an extraordinary amount of work and, quite frankly, a plate that no one person could reasonably expected to handle. So as we add Calvin to the team, I'm also very pleased to announce that Vero Molina has been promoted to Senior Vice President of Standards and Practices. And as everybody knows here, Vero's role alongside Rick has been critical, and I know that she'll serve in a similar capacity alongside Calvin, along with some new additional duties on her plate. And I am absolutely thrilled to have Vero in this new role. Those on this call and around the company know that Vero is an extraordinary leader with terrific instincts and a real sense not just of journalistic integrity, but also how CNN works and thrives. So please join me in congratulating Vero, and please join me next week in welcoming Calvin to CNN. I think we have a terrific team as we go forward. So with all of that, I think this is a very exciting time for CNN with the recognition of our incredible news gathering operation, a new dynamic team to lead our Standards and Practices Group at a time where it's never been more critical. There is so much going on right now, and so let's start our daily coverage with COVID and Matthew.
Good morning, Jeff. So, quote, not a good place to be. That is Fauci's assessment of where we stand on this, the first day of fall. Obviously, Sanjay just now starting his conversation with Fauci at Citizen. Right now, we are 110 shy of that terrible 200,000 death mark. As Trump declares last night, it affects virtually nobody. And certainly you can parse the conversation about death by age any way you want, but there is no way to interpret this as it affects virtually nobody. The U.S. average of new daily cases is over 43,000, which is up 12% over the last couple of weeks. Fauci talking right now about the baseline being way too high as we head toward fall and winter, the weather cooling, people spending much more time indoors. That is not a good place to be, he said last night. The U.S. is at almost 6.9 million cases. And in contrast to the White House messages, Fauci said you can't look at that and say this is terrific. The Operation Warp Speed chief says, quote, we are pretty close to a vaccine, and we'll have results on efficacy somewhere between October and January. And, of course, the CDC's latest embarrassing misstep on the airborne guidance is yet another dent in the credibility of this long-trusted agency. What next when it comes to the CDC? In terms of key numbers and key regions, we are clearly in an uptick. It may not all be the result of Labor Day weekend. About half of the state up week to week in new cases, only 6 down week to week, the rest flat. Experts say the increases can be pegged to more than one thing. Overall complacency, relaxing, socializing, of course, the Labor Day festivities, campuses returning, clusters showing up on the data there. Utah has been spiking for 2 weeks, up over 75% last week in new cases, and there's intense pressure on the governor for a mask mandate. Arizona is spiking again over a month after turning things way around, with double the new cases compared to last week. Minnesota higher than the July peak now, Wisconsin rising consistently for a month, so 2 examples of the Midwest hotspots. Fauci does note there are parts of the country doing well, he says. And a couple of examples of that would be California seeing its lowest positivity rate yet, and Florida mostly flat since coming way down after July. We've got Rosa Flores in Miami, Bryn Gingras in New York on all of the day of threads. On schools, public schools are clearly forging ahead with more and more in-person reopenings. Orange County, California schools are allowed to start reopening in person today. About 140 of them are. Many are not. Broward County, Florida School Board will take up the plan today for in-person learning. That would start on October 5th. New York City still on track for some in-person openings next week. And on the college side, the University of Colorado at Boulder goes remote only for 2 weeks, saying transmission is not dropping quickly enough. And we've got Biana on the education thread. On the health front, on vaccines, we learned this morning that a key federal advisory panel meeting today will delay taking a vote on how to prioritize a vaccine until they learn more about which vaccine is available. This is the meeting that starts at 10 o'clock and goes all day with the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. We'll see what else comes out of it. But again, we heard from the Warp Speed chief yesterday about that important result coming between October and January, explaining the variable here is how many cases show up among the volunteers. The timeline, though, he says, if there's an authorization near the end of the year, we could see the most vulnerable get doses in December, elderly and frontline workers in January, the rest of the population, he says, in February, March, and April. Sanjay obviously available after this ongoing interview, and Elizabeth available through the day as well. On sports and COVID, 3 NFL teams, Seahawks, Broncos, 49ers, and their coaches collectively fined over $1 million because the coaches weren't wearing masks. The Raiders' John Gruden said after coaching maskless last night, I'm doing my best. I apologize. The wrap pieces today are Erica Hill for 4, 6, and 8, Nick Watt for 5, 7, and 9.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much. International COVID.
Hey, so congrats to our team for the Emmy wins, and thanks for mentioning, Jeff. Just with UNGA kicking off today, our broader theme is that we'll hear from heads of state, including Trump, taking the world stage really at a time when leadership is badly needed, and many would say lacking when it comes to the pandemic. So we'll have all of our international reporters up to react, including Nick, Will Ripley, Matthew Chance, from all the key bureaus. This morning, Boris Johnson addressed Parliament. He's going to address the nation in a statement at 3 p.m. Eastern, UK moving to alert level 4. He really struck this somber tone, talking about the UK has reached this perilous turning point. New restrictions like curfews on pubs and bars, recommendations to work from home, an expansion of mask wearing, etc. It's really just a different message than what was said a month ago, where they were really trying to, kick off the economy again. These measures really underscore this debate about keeping the economy going versus health. So Scott McLean is on all of that, and we have Anna Stewart, too, live from the pub. So France is also struggling to bring case numbers under control. Outbreaks again being seen in retirement homes and such. Overnight, Italy announced travelers from the worst hit areas in France have to be tested for COVID upon arrival, and Melissa Bell has those lines. A Madrid opera performance was halted Sunday after audience members protested over a lack of social distancing. A good note is that there was social distancing in the expensive seats, but less so in the cheaper areas. So Al Goodman has that report. Christy Lou Stout has a package looking at how the New Zealand Prime Minister is under pressure because of taking selfies that didn't adhere to social distancing rules. Today, she faces the opposition leader in the country's first TV debate. So Christy really lays out all that's at stake for her in these upcoming elections. Selena Wang has a look live on Chinese social media backlash over this government-sponsored TV show about the fight against COVID. It's being slammed for the way it's stereotyping women. Stephen Zhang looked at this Chinese tycoon who has criticized Beijing's handling of COVID. He's now been jailed for 18 years for corruption. It just shows China trying hard to get private citizens, private businesses in line, and it will likely play into Trump's narrative on China at the UNGA today. And then just lastly, Paula Newton has a look live on COVID cases spiking in Canada and what restrictions are in place there. And that's where we start on COVID.
Thank you very much. Business.
Jeff, good morning. Equity searching for direction this morning, trying to stage a comeback after that 500-point rout yesterday. One analyst telling me this morning that there's this newfound fear of rising COVID cases, especially given what has happened in the UK today that Penny just mentioned, and clearly a falling stock market. Bad news for the president who views the market as a real economy. Christine Roman is up and available on that this morning. The big story, though, today, all eyes on the Hill, where Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell and Secretary Steven Mnuchin will be questioned by lawmakers in about an hour's time on fiscal policy and the need for more stimulus. And as we've noted on the call, the Fed really the only game in town with Congress unable to move on more fiscal aid. An economist in the Times this morning smartly noted that Powell was once on the verge of being fired for not doing enough to turbocharge the economy. Now he stands a decent chance of keeping a job no matter who is elected president. Again, that kicks off at 10:30. Christina Leshing, CNN Business, all over that this morning. Now, this morning, Powell's not the only one urging D.C. to get its act together on stimulus. We have the leaders from each of the major unions of some big airlines, American, United, JetBlue. They're on the Hill today, pressuring for their bailout of that industry. And a pair of key Senate Republicans that proposed a new bill that aims to extend the CARES Act funding and protections for at least 6 months, hopefully saving 50,000 airline workers from furloughs that are set to begin in about 9 days' time. Pete Muntean is all available on that today. And of course, the travel and leisure sector continuing to take a beating. CNN Business reporting that Sizzler USA, one of the country's first casual restaurant chains, filing for bankruptcy. And moments ago, Ralph Lauren announcing its plans to reduce its global workforce and focus on online sales in the pandemic economy. Allison Kosik is up and available on that today, and that's where we'll begin on COVID.
Thank you very much. Washington COVID.
So as we head towards 200,000, this whole back and forth over the CDC and what really happened behind the scenes there, we will focus on a reporting on that today. If you add this to testing, this does not bode well for the rollout of the vaccine and how the government is handling it and the faith in these institutions. So it's significant, not just in the science, but also in the leadership side of it. Trump, for his part last night, aside from what Matthew said, which is that it doesn't virtually affect no one who is young, he also talked about how the U.S. is doing better and all these European countries are dealing with a second wave. So he has a rally tonight in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, and we expect to hear more on this, but continuing to give himself top grade as we hit 200,000.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts on COVID? Okay. Matthew?
Okay, I'll start with the Breonna Taylor case. We're on high alert for anything to happen at any time. Louisville is preparing for the worst. We'll soon learn about whether there are charges for the officers. We have no idea which way this will go, but tensions in the city are extremely high. Police barricades are up. The police department declares a state of emergency, cancels leave, takes all kinds of precautions in anticipation of a grand jury announcement from the Attorney General. Some federal buildings closed. Police holding a news conference on preparations in about 10 minutes. Again, we do not know when that announcement will come. Our guidance is in the next day or two, but we'll keep you posted. And we are still working to match Louisville Courier-Journal report that it's now a total of 6 officers under investigation for possible misconduct, which would be several more beyond the original officers involved in the shooting and botched raid. We're all over this on the ground with Shimon Prokopez, Jason Carroll, Mark Morales, and other teams identified if we need more. Again, we think this will come today, tomorrow. In the Jacob Blake case, some indications that things are moving closer to a decision. In this case of a black man shot 7 times in the back by Kenosha police. The state investigators appear to have wrapped most of their work. They have now hired as a consultant a former police chief to review the files before the DA makes the final decision on charges. We've got Omar available on this. We're keeping an eye on a situation in suburban Atlanta in Cobb County where police say a barricaded gunman is firing shots at the neighborhood. Keep you posted on that. Then finally, this just interesting story about Michael Jordan and NASCAR, the new venture meeting the first majority black-owned NASCAR team in 60 years, announced by Jordan and Denny Hamlin, and Bubba Wallace will drive for that team in 2021. And that's it.
Thank you. International.
Hey, so the one other thing I'll mention is this distinctive content coinciding with the start of Climate Week and UNGA. We are part of this exclusive cross-platform deep dive that I'm sure Digital will lay out in greater detail. But our TV contribution includes Phil Black reporting from Poland, where the pandemic could have been an important moment in the fight against climate change, an opportunity to go greener, and instead our report found that some of the biggest fossil fuel-producing countries are using taxpayer money to prop up polluting industries. So that's the other thing I would mention in our coverage today.
Thank you very much. Business.
Hi there. So one other thing for us as well. I just want to mention Brian Fung, the latest on the tech Cold War brewing between the U.S. and China. There's still a lot of confusion as to who is actually going to own TikTok and the fate of the deal. One of the most important aspects of the deal that is unchanged, ByteDance is going to continue to own the algorithm and the code, which means that there's still going to be national security concerns. The president saying yesterday he would not approve the deal unless ByteDance fully sells. But it's not clear, whether or not the reallocation of those shares through an IPO would qualify. And meanwhile, China has still yet to sign off on the deal. Brian Fung is up on that today and also working through this Wall Street Journal reporting that Beijing is trying to speed up its development of a blacklist that could be used to punish U.S. technology firms. So we're going through that as well, and that's where we go.
Okay, Washington.
Okay, so on the Ginsburg situation, the president is saying, and Meadows confirmed this morning, Saturday for an announcement. Barrett is clearly the favorite here. As our team reported, she was at the White House yesterday, had a good meeting. Lagoa is still there, but the consensus seems to be that there may be some issues with conservatives. And Trump is expected will be in Miami later this week, so we'll see if he meets with her there. But all indications are leading towards Barrett. There is a flag, however, emerging in that, which is this group that she belongs to. It is called People of Praise, who promote the lifelong oath of loyalty and teaches that husbands are the head of their wives and have authority over the family. We're just clearing this now. It seems that the understanding is that this is in line with the Catholic religion and is not diametrically opposed to that. So it's in that context, but it is clearly going to be something that is going to be talked about. On the Hill, we're expected to hear later today what Romney has to say, but all other Republicans are falling into line, and it seems virtually impossible now to see how the Democrats can pick up 2 more votes to hold this nomination. And now the question is whether they'll do this before the election, which seems to be Lindsey Graham saying we have to vote and and it's time to go. So our Hill team and White House teams are on that. On voting, today is the National Voting Registration Day. There were some big rulings in court cases. A Nevada case against the Trump campaign in Wisconsin. You can now, it will be up to 6 days after the election that votes can be accepted, which will, again, another swing state that could drag this out. In Pennsylvania, ballots without proper envelopes can be thrown out. This could affect up to 100,000 voters, which is significant in a state that was that close to 2016. And then this really interesting Bloomberg announcement that he's putting out $16 million to pay the court fines and fees of 32,000 Black and Hispanic Florida voters with felony convictions. And then the other big story down here, Josh Rogan, he was on New Day this morning, and this assessment that he has sourced that Putin and other senior Russian officials are aware of and probably directing Russian influence operations aimed at undermining Biden. This tied to the Rudy Giuliani acquaintance who helped with the smear campaign against Biden. And this, of course, comes a week after Wray say that the Russians are very active in this campaign. And Alex Marquardt is on that. And that's what I got.
Okay, I mean, obviously there's a lot there. I really do think that this reporting from Josh Rogan that Alex Marquardt is picking up on is very significant, and I don't want it to get lost today. So I want to make sure that we are all over that through the day. Okay, let's do politics, and then again, because it's hard to separate, and then we'll open it up.
Good morning, Jeff. And just to underline what Virginia's saying about Michael Bloomberg, I do think each day this Florida strategy from Bloomberg and the money he's pouring in is just fascinating and maybe worth a look at it, or a guess maybe if we haven't had Kevin Sheehy on or someone to talk about each piece of the strategy, because it has so much. It's like allowing the Biden camp to focus resources elsewhere. It's geared towards trying to avoid a chaotic and prolonged election night. Florida actually does know how to count votes, and if they can sort of solve that early on, perhaps the investment prevents post-election chaos. And then now this piece about restitution and fines and paying $60 million for these so that these ex-felons can vote. It's just, we've never seen one person sort of develop a multi-pronged strategy on like the critical battleground state. It's just really interesting and maybe worth discussion. I'd mentioned yesterday morning talking about sort of Biden's response to the court vacancy, that if you were looking for some rabble-rousing progressive leader to sort of storm the barricades on this, Joe Biden's not the guy. And in fact, he thinks not being that is what delivered him the nomination and has him in the hunt for the presidency. So, and I think his remarks yesterday in Wisconsin sort of fit that as well, where he deliberately did not focus his remarks or deal with the court vacancy at all. Instead, he focused on making his most direct appeal to date to Obama-Trump voters, as we talked about last Friday on this call, his pursuit of trying to diminish and dampen Trump's advantage with white working-class voters across these battleground Midwest states. That is exactly where he kept his focus. In local interviews, when he was asked about the court, he did say that the Republicans shouldn't proceed because voters have started voting. And he said by the time this confirmation process wraps up, perhaps nearly 40% of the electorate will have cast its ballots, and that it's against the spirit of the Constitution. He also would not answer about the court packing question that he got, that many liberals and progressives are pushing for, saying he is not going to get distracted from the bigger issues before him, and so he did not play on that. Speaking of those critical battleground Midwest states, there's a new Des Moines Register poll out this morning of Iowa showing a tied race there, 47% to 47%. We've seen, again, a very stable, close race there now for the last several months, a state that Donald Trump won by some 9 points just 4 years ago. We don't see Biden today. He's doing a couple of virtual fundraisers and no doubt some debate prep as we are now a week away from that first all-important Trump versus Biden debate. We will see Kamala Harris in Michigan today. She does Flint and then Detroit. She's doing what the campaign calls a, quote, shop talk stop, which is focused on wooing African-American male voters, and she is highlighting the whole National Voter Registration Day and the importance of that. And I think that is where we start.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, so now let's open it up for thoughts from anybody on any topic.
Hey, Jeff, it's Cynthia. I just wanted to tell you that we're working on a really interesting story. We found that there is an influence by Duque in Colombia and Uribe's group trying to push the South Florida message of the socialism. Maria Elvira Salazar has used one of the guys that is here. He's an ex-Colombian senator to help her with her socialism is coming and Shalala's a socialist story. And so we're working on that story. I think there's going to be a lot of meat in there. And again, this is a big issue in the South Florida area.
Okay, good. Thank you, Cynthia. Other thoughts?
Hi, Jeff. I have two. One is it is remarkable that to think that, that in 2020, one of the leading institutions in the country on coronavirus and social justice is the National Football League. And I just think as we're, after today's news about the fines regarding masks and what they're doing to start the games with the Black National Anthem and racism in the end zone, we've mentioned, but I think combining the two is really remarkable, considering that just in the last couple of years, what we talked about is them ignoring Colin Kaepernick. So I just think it maybe after today's news about the fines, it maybe might be taking a look at that as how they're leading the way in kind of becoming such a progressive institution. Stunning, really. The second is, I don't know what our plans are to pick up on the FinCEN, but the more you read the articles about what has been discovered, it is an appalling indictment of the big banks in America and around the world and what they facilitated for kleptocrats, criminals, terrorists, and no one paying the price for any of this. It's really on a scale we haven't seen before, so I just wanted to point that out as well. I know it's tough for a TV story, but maybe if we assign it, and maybe it's already in the works, I don't know, but it's really important. Tough to get there with all that we've got going on, but it is. I encourage everybody to read these stories.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rick.
Hey, Jeff, it's David. I had a point about Judge Barrett's association with the Catholic group. I just want to be clear. Male headship is what it's called. It's a very nuanced issue, and there's not universal agreement among Catholics about what it means. What she belongs to is a conservative Catholic group, not unlike the associations that Bill Barr has. And I think the more interesting point here is where Bill Barr and these types have common ground with the president is they both believe in reinstituting a social order where the male, mostly the white man, is on top. And that's very much teaching of these conservative groups that Barr and Barrett belong to. And I think doing a deeper dive probably on digital is worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Hey, I wanted to add something that Vic said about sports and social justice. We're actually doing a panel about that today at a Turner Sports Sales event. But, if you look at the NBA, when they postponed their season, that's when we all knew that pandemic was real, right? And now they're in their bubble and everything. And so I think it's beyond the NFL. Honestly, it's the NBA sort of leading the charge, but now it's across sports leagues. So it's really, I mean, I think that's a really important point, Rick. But I also wanted to mention this great op-ed by the widow of Representative Elijah Cummings, who was known as the Conscience of Congress. Her op-ed is so fascinating because apparently Cummings wrote a book which was released today called "We're Better Than This: My Fight for the Future of Our Democracy." And, early on, he recognized what he called the political perversion of what's going on in politics and sort of, political warfare at the expense of our Constitution and democratic institutions. And, he wrote this obviously several months ago before he died. And so, what he has to say, and I think what his wife, Maya Rockamore Cummings, has to say is really important. And so I don't know if we're thinking about booking her or not, but Cummings even went to the inauguration, although Representative Lewis wanted to boycott it, but because he wanted to try and make inroads and sort of, bipartisanship around important issues, but he found that wasn't of any interest. And so I think she would be a really great guest.
Okay. Hey, Jeff, two quick things on the sports front. I totally agree with Rick. I said after the NFL opener, we should have the conversation, what if the NFL ran the country? As you had the contrast that night between the Trump rally with people not social distancing and not wearing masks, and the NFL in Kansas City with fans in the stands, everybody social distancing, the coaches wearing masks. Obviously not all the coaches were, and now they paid for that. But I do think it's an interesting conversation. It is about, as Janita said, it's all the sports leagues and what they've done. Baseball finally got its act together. The NHL's been perfect. NBA's been perfect. NFL has a great plan, and when it isn't followed, they take action. I do think it's a good conversation. What if the NFL ran the country? Where would we be right now? That's one. And then the second thing is I want to emphatically second David. David was saying we should look into Florida. I think we absolutely should be doing a deep dive into Florida with all the context of how close the recent elections in Florida have been. And we kind of laugh about it because it's always like Rick Scott wins all of his elections within 1% or 1.5%. And the governor's race was very, very close. And, Florida is pretty much split down the middle. It's gone red the last few statewide elections, but it's pretty much split down the middle, and a few thousand votes could make a difference. And we've had interesting things happening. Trump gave all of a sudden all that money to Puerto Rico. He's the greatest thing that's ever happened to Puerto Rico, which we know is totally tied to the vote in Florida. He's considering a judge from Miami. And you've got Bloomberg very aggressively with his $100 million of his own money and now raising $16 million of other people's money to allow these felons to pay their fines and vote. And I think it said in the story with 30,000 of them so far have been able to pay off or will pay off their fines and be able to vote. 30,000 could be an extraordinary difference maker in Florida. And I think having a deep dive that looks at how close the elections have been, what's going on there now, what both sides are doing to try to rally as many people as they can and register as many people as they can, et cetera. I just think it's a really important story.
So, David Callion, do we have somebody assigned to do that Florida story? There's a number of shows that have already raised their hands and said they want that story.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
We'll get that done.
Good. There you go. Other thoughts? By the way, Rick, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the point that you were also making about the NFL is what's so surprising about the NFL and leading the way is where they've come from. And given that they were the ones that had all the issues with Colin Kaepernick, so even though they're now leading the way and doing, such a interesting and extraordinary job on this, it's noteworthy about where they've come from on this issue because they frankly didn't handle Colin Kaepernick or any of the issues surrounding that well at all.
Yeah, and their ownership is pretty conservative. There are only a few owners who are really kind of left of center, and it's a big deal in that way.
Yep.
Jeff,
Jeff, I think we could also Jeff, I think we should also tie the attacks on LeBron James and on the basketball players, because they're being attacked for, standing up for things that are part of their platform. And in the case of LeBron, I mean, he's being massacred on social media for taking a stand. And I just think that there's the divide is so great between the two messages and the way that they're attacking. I don't know if the NBA, is doing as much as the NFL in terms of standing up to the players. So it's just a point on that one.
Hey, Jeff, it's Jen Bernstein. I just want to make one point about the NFL. I would say, Kaepernick came out very strongly against the NFL. Eric Reed, a safety who's still without a job, last week called the NFL diabolical for showing Kaepernick in the video of the Alicia Keys, singing the Black National Anthem. So the people who are at the forefront for the original controversy are still very unhappy with the NFL.
Okay. By the way, Washington and John Mitt Romney has come out and will support a vote now. So,
which seems to me that this is going to be all systems go.
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to try and move it before the election.
Yeah.
But Mitt Romney is now out. So, okay. Anybody else?
Hey, Jeff, it's Ben. Just one thing really quickly for anyone on the call who hasn't had a chance to listen to Sanjay talking to Fauci this morning during a citizen event. Fauci saying things really important that we've heard before about simple public health measures that are not being utilized, and that lowering the baseline is not rocket science. I think we've all become a little bit numb to this now because of how many times we've heard it, and I think we can and should be doing a better job of really sounding the alarm on this as we move into next month, which is just next week, and move towards flu season. Now is the time to get ourselves down to a lower baseline to avoid a much, much bigger problem. If we don't get there and we start at a higher level, we are setting ourselves up as a country for an unmitigated disaster that we can and should prevent now. So I think in the wrap pieces today and in all the segments with Sanjay and Elizabeth and the guests, we should really be reminding people this is something we can do something about now, and next month it is really going to start to be too late.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to say I don't know how many other shows are going to do it, but that video of the Trump supporter telling the crowd about Trump MAGA mask that was used on New Day, and combine that with Fauci just said Sanjay again about with mask wearing would have made a difference is just so striking, because it shows how the people who support Donald Trump are not only not wearing masks, they're mocking the man and booing the guy who's talking about how you can get a MAGA mask. I mean, nothing illustrates the divide and ignorance, frankly, as we hit this horrific number of 200,000 that seen last night at the rally.
And he wasn't just a Trump supporter, he was the lieutenant governor of Ohio.
Okay, excuse me, any other thoughts? Digital.
Hey, good morning. 28 million uniques yesterday that was led by the CDC reversing its guidance and the Obaidallah op-ed on why the Democrats' response to RBG should terrify Trump. The top videos of the last 24-ish hours of Breonna Keeler with Morgan Stern and Eric Burnett with Barrasso. This morning, number one is the CDC retraction showing the chaos of Trump's COVID response. That's Collinson. Then it's the no Supreme Court nominee yet, but McConnell is already on the cusp. And with Romney, I suppose now he has it, of having the vote. This is the Mattingly and Fox state of play. We are updating that and everywhere else with the Romney news. Colleges knew the risks but they reopened anyway, and here's how they got it all wrong. The Chinese tycoon who criticized Xi Jinping's handling of the virus jailed for 18 years. And then rounding out the top stories this morning are a couple of counter-programming pieces. An old television signal that kept wiping out a village's broadband is just a kind of super counter-programming read. And the healthiest communities in the United States for 2020, Los Alamos County tops the list, and people are looking at that story to see where their community lands. So in preparation for the 200,000 death number in the U.S., we have a story that will go up with the headline, 200,000 people have died from COVID. That's more than the U.S. battle deaths from 5 wars combined. The story from Holly Ann is what happened today seemed impossible to many Americans 6 months ago. And when Fauci predicted all the way back in March that the virus could kill 200,000, skeptics lambasted him and accused him of fear-mongering. And now here we are. We hit it earlier than he predicted. We have some good international contrast and comparison stories on COVID. Penny hit some of them. The Taiwan story is really good because it shows a positive example. Taiwan led the world in closing down for COVID. Now it wants to do the same with opening back up. We have a suite of really strong explainers today on the Supreme Court nomination process from Zach Wolf. We have what Obamacare being on the line means for millions of Americans. Some of that is inspired by the conversation we had on this call yesterday. That's Tammy Luby, who's excellent on this, as you all know. And we have an explainer also on voter registration. There's also a quiz that we have on voter registration to test knowledge on voting rights and election processes and all of that. So that's great to have on voter registration day. Some strong race and policing headlines. Matthew talked about all the detail and color on Louisville preparing for the Breonna Taylor announcement. We have that. We also have a story on more people were killed in Louisville this year than ever before in the city's history. That number is 121. So that's just a good background and context piece as we wait for that announcement. The Twitter algorithm that has been in the news on that platform and off that seems to be biased in showing pictures of favoring pictures of white people. So, for example, if you have a split image of a black person and a white person side by side, no matter what order you put those two people in, the algorithm crops the white person for the preview image that shows up on the Twitter feed. So that's a very good story from business that we're holding the platforms to account. And then Penny mentioned we launched overnight a really big, ambitious story, multi-part story that connects climate to the pandemic. The headline is, "The coronavirus gave governments a chance to fix the climate crisis, and that is being wasted." Our reporting shows that this moment is being wasted because governments are pouring more and more money into fossil fuels. There's exclusive data that's being visualized in really just compelling, head-turning, and disturbing ways about how the world is behind and running out of time. And reporting from Poland, Australia, Canada, India, it's truly global. It's really great. You can find it at cnn.com/climate2020. And then lastly, we are live streaming and live videoing the Citizen Conference, so we'll be pulling out the newsworthy moments from that. That's it.
Okay, thank you. John?
Good morning, Jeff. So on the verge of 2000, waiting to mark that moment. We're close. And then obviously the Sanjay interview with Fauci that we just took live from the Citizen event will drive the COVID headlines today. He sounded off on, of course, you have to make the assumption that COVID could spread through the air through aerosolized particles, which brings us back to the CDC changing guidance and bringing the guidance down yesterday. And then also how we're entering into a very risky period with the fall. We need to continue to obey all the measures that we know work. We have Dr. Paul Sachs, Jay Varkey, Anne Ramoyne, and Amesh Adalja to jump onto all those headlines and the
and the other news made in the last 24 hours about COVID. There's a lot of headlines out there. We'll make sure we get through all of them. Internationally, we'll be doing whips, and Scott McLean with the UK title restrictions will be the lead for the international whips, and we are going to be on the NFL fine story today. Certainly interesting and very topical. The Washington Post reporting came from Rogan on the CIA and what they had to say about Biden, Putin. That's going to play prominently in all shows. We're getting him up later on this afternoon. Alex Marquardt's fronting the story and other shows. We have Mike Rogers and Susan Glasser in the mix to discuss this and the importance of this, and it brings us back to the bar sound with the Wolf interview from a few weeks ago, where they keep trying to put the focus on China, and yet the CIA says it's really all about Russia. Trump on the world stage. We're taking the taped UNGA speech now. He taped it yesterday. So we'll see what news lines we get out of there. John Harwood and Caitlin Collins from the White House. And then SCOTUS. We just took the Romney announcement on Capitol Hill supporting the Trump nominee. Monty Rodman diplomatically on the Hill. Now it's all about the timeline and how quickly they're going to rush this through the confirmation hearings. Then a vote. There is a Senate lunch among the GOP today. McConnell comes out afterwards at 2. Maybe we'll get more of an indication about the timeline then. Ariane DeVoe continues on the nominee angle in the news that we're learning about Barrett. Finally, Breonna Taylor, grand jury watch, Shimon in the mix, and obviously we'll build up considerably once we get word of what the grand jury decision is. And we'll also make sure to mark the LA cops both discharged now from the hospital.
Okay. Thank you, John. Washington?
Sorry, muting issues. Sorry. At 4 o'clock, we'll pick up with Caitlin Collins from the White House with the latest on the Supreme Court, of course, as GOP now seems to have votes. And Senator Chris Coons joins Jake. Erica has our COVID wrap, and we'll have Sanjay as well. H.R. McMaster joins with his new book, looking at the Trump administration, threats from abroad, how he blames strategic narcissism for U.S. foreign policy blunders going back to the Cold War. And, of course, we'll get into the CIA Putin report with him as well. Jake talks to Julie Louis-Dreyfus shortly at Citizen by CNN, and we'll turn a chunk on the upcoming election, and Sarah Murray on the shady GOP operative behind Kanye West's campaign.
And in the Situation Room, we'll be obviously following on the grim milestone of 200,000 deaths, where we'll likely be by 5 o'clock. Fauci just now calling it a stunning and sobering moment, and also saying that lowering the baseline is not rocket science. We'll see what else comes out of his interview with Sanjay. All of this after Trump said virtually no one is affected. We'll follow on yesterday's CDC embarrassment and see what new reporting we get on that today. And we'll continue to watch these new upticks in places like Utah and Arizona. So we'll get to all of that with Sanjay and our doctors and the Watt and Phil wrap pieces. Internationally, we'll watch this announcement from Boris Johnson at 3 o'clock on the UK alert reaching level 4. And then on Ginsburg, we'll be obviously following on Romney sealing the deal for the GOP and what happens next. We'll also see what else we learn about Barrett, which our reporting is showing is now emerging as Trump's top choice. We will bring Josh Rogan back on his reporting from the Post, and we'll obviously be watching for that decision in the Breonna Taylor case, and we'll see if anything comes out of the Blake case today, and that's where we're starting.
Thank you. I just do want to reiterate that I think that the Josh Rogan reporting out of the CIA is really important today. Anyone else have anything they want to bring up?
I mean, particularly because the President of the United States has excoriated the FBI director because he opened his big mouth, and then we have what Josh is reporting to reinforce that. And it all ties back to the same thing we've been talking about for 4 years about Trump and Russia. It is unbelievable.
Yeah. So look, I really think that. Hold on a second. I really do think, to your point, we have to connect the dots. what Josh is reporting, what the FBI director said, what Trump excoriated Ray for, what Trump refused to say yesterday about who's responsible for poisoning Navalny. All of it is connected, all connected. And
what Coates said about Trump to Woodward.
What Coates said about Trump to Woodward. I mean, this is like, primetime shows, I would connect all the dots, put it all together. Take time.
We got the former national security director on with Jake, so there's a place you can do it too.
Yeah, I mean, there's just, connect the dots. It's all there. Other thoughts?
Two other quick ones. One is maybe both counterintuitive. If you're a Florida voter and your legislature passed something that says about that they have to that the criminals have to pay what they owe, and then the judge affirmed that, and this rich billionaire in New York is coming down to intervene in your election to pay them so that they basically will then go vote probably the way he wants them to. How are you feeling about that? I mean, we're all saying, look what he's doing, and he's going to go try to impact Florida because to avert the chaos, which David was right to point out. But think about that from the Florida, maybe independent-minded voter, about that intrusion in their own state vote. So I just think that you might watch for that and maybe have some commentary about it. The second one is about the hypocrisy issue. And, we're attacking the senators for their hypocrisy, Jeff and everybody else, Jeff Toobin and everyone else doing that. But they're doing it because their constituents want them to do it. Because for the last 4 years, 2,000 misleading and lies have been staged by the president, and he's got nearly 90% approval rating among Republicans. There is no penalty for lying and being a hypocrite anymore in politics. And so they're seeing that, and they would pay the price if they went the other way. So we're criticizing the senators, but the senators are doing what their voters want them to do. Now, we're electing them as leaders, but they're reflecting what the people have voted them to do, and they almost had no other choice, because if they went the other way, they would pay the price. And Susan Collins will probably pay the price, just as Donald Trump said she would. So I think there's something to be said for what the electorate is accepting, at least right of center electorate, regarding the hypocrisy. It's just not the senators.
And I would just come back to the Florida thing. I'm sorry.
It's all led by Fox News. It is all related, and it all comes back to Rupert Murdoch and Fox News.
Yeah, coming back to the Florida thing. We remember this was a ballot issue that almost 65% of the state of Florida voted in favor to restore those rights. And the notion of paying the fines was added on as a way to a burden. The argument is that wasn't part of what was ballot initiative. So I think Rick's point is fair, but I think that it really passed by an overwhelming number to restore their voting rights.
Hey, Jeff, is there another state in the union, the U.S., that allows felons to vote? But I don't know if that's the case. I know in Puerto Rico, for example, in the 90s, they allowed prisoners to vote, and then it kind of created almost like a power that these people had, and they kind of manipulate, or not to manipulate, but it kind of bent the politics of both parties on the island to appease this voting bloc because of the new power they had by voting. I don't know if that's the case in the U.S., and if such, what has been the impact of such decision of felon voting?
I don't know the answer to that.
Plenty of states allow felons to vote. Some states never take away the right to vote. There's a big difference between a felon who is out of jail voting and someone who's in prison voting. Those are not the same set of people.
Okay, everybody, listen, there's a lot going on. Let's stay newsy and focused and have a great day. Bye-bye.